Details emerge about talks to have embattled South African President Jacob Zuma cede power to his deputy Cyril Ramaphosa. And the African Union Commission Chair Musa Faki Mahamat makes a trip to China in the face of spying allegations, of course, by the AU. And after 5 years, the called Gambia's new president, Adama Barrow, leads the country back to the Commonwealth Group of Nations. And up to 300 child soldiers liberated in South Sudan, as while the tension on the 5-year conflict gets intense. Of course, this is Bottomline Africa. My name is Yusuf Ibrahim. We have a lot lined up for you, including those top stories. But first, let's go straight to our highlights tonight. Details emerge about talks to have embattled South African President Jacob Zuma cede power to his deputy Cyril Ramaphosa. The African Union Commission Chair Musa Faki Mahamat makes a trip to China in the face of spying allegations against the AU. After 5 years in, the called Gambia's new president Adama Barrow leads the country back to the Commonwealth Group of Nations. And up to 300 child soldiers liberated in South Sudan, as while the tension on the 5-year conflict gets intense. Of course, this is a favorite Pan-African show, Bottomline Africa. Now let's begin with our top story tonight. And we begin from down south. In South Africa's National Congress Party leader, Cyril Ramaphosa, says he's holding direct talks with President Jacob Zuma over transition and matters relating to Zuma's position as president of that country. Now, Zuma, in power since 2009 and beset by corruption allegations, has been in a weakened position since Deputy President Ramaphosa replaced him as ANC leader in December. Ramaphosa has talked over transition of power since he took over as leader of the ANC. Now, in a statement, Ramaphosa said he and Zuma began the talks on Tuesday night and hope to conclude their discussion and report back to country, quote-unquote, in coming days. Now, the first official confirmation of the talks between the two leaders, Ramaphosa said the process was an opportunity to conclude the matter without causing discord in the country. Meanwhile, a top official of South Africa's governing African National Congress Party, ANC, has given dramatic details of how President Jacob Zuma stubbornly refused to agree to resign at a meeting on Sunday. Now, the scandal hit Mr. Zuma was urged by the party's top 6 officials to step down in favor of new ANC leader Cyril Ramaphosa, but apparently he refused. Now, the African Union chief Musa Faki Mahamat is visiting China just days after a French newspaper reported that Beijing has been spying on the continental body. During the visit, the African Union chairman dismissed the report as lies intended to derail cooperation between China and Africa. Now, the report published by Le Monde in January claimed technicians at the AU's Chinese-built headquarters in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, discovered last year that the contents of their computers had been regularly copied to servers in Shanghai, China since 2012, citing unnamed AU sources. Le Monde says the AU servers were changed and its IT systems redone, and the copying was found. The newspaper also reported that the Ethiopian cybersecurity experts removed microphones hidden in the desks and walls of the headquarters. China is deeply invested in Africa.
This will be extended to regular and daily dialogues, and that the dialogue between North Korea and South Korea will be expanded to a dialogue among all relevant parties, especially between the DPRK and the United States, and realizing the denuclearization of the peninsula. The first step taken by both the North and the South is very timely and very important. We hope that both sides can continue to maintain the current hard-won interactive momentum and use this as a starting point to step-by-step open the door to dialogue and negotiations on the peninsula. Of course, it is not enough only with the efforts of the North and the South to achieve this goal. These allegations are lies, and I think that the timing was accidental. I can assure you that the relationship between China and Africa, as I have said, is unshakable. No such maneuver can deter us from our objective.
L'Union africaine est une organisation politique internationale. Elle ne traite pas.
The African Union is an international political organization. It does not deal with secret defense documents. We are an administration and don't see the point for China to offer a building of this nature and spy on us. So, these allegations are total lies, and I think we can ignore them entirely.
Let's cross over to Gambia. The Gambia has been readmitted to the Commonwealth, welcomed back into the fold after its sudden pullout in 2013 following the democratic election last year of President Adama Barrow. Now, former President Yahya Jammeh dramatically withdrew the impoverished West African nation in October 2013, branding the group an extension of colonialism. New President Adama Barrow began the readmission process in February last year, 2 months after topping an election, after which Jammeh initially refused to give up his 22-year rule, triggering as crisis there. Now, accused of flagrant rights abuses, Jammeh ruled mainland Africa's smallest country with an aura of mysticism and an iron fist after seizing power in 1994. Barrow's formal application last month for the Gambia to rejoin the Commonwealth received unanimous backing from the other members. A formal ceremony later on Thursday will mark the occasion.
It was a great moment of sadness. Sadness for the Gambia, sadness particularly for the Gambian people. So it's a coming home. Having the Gambia come back to the Commonwealth family has been a real moment of rejoicing. We've made it clear that any member who has left is welcomed home if they wish to commit to the Charter and the values. And so any member who's left, we're always anxious that they come back.
Democracy, the rule of law, good governance, respect for human rights, and the total independence of our judiciary have been fully restored, in the Gambia. And therefore, we are inviting, the international community to come to the Gambia.
Now, African migrants demonstrated Wednesday outside the Rwandan embassy in Israel against the Israeli government's policy to deport African refugees and asylum seekers from Israel to a third country, which aid workers say is either Rwanda or Uganda. Now, Israel is working to expel thousands of mainly Eritreans and Sudanese who entered illegally over the years, giving them an ultimatum: leave by April 1st or risk being imprisoned indefinitely. Authorities began issuing migrants letters on Sunday advising them that they had only 60 days in which to leave the country voluntarily. For now, the notices are being given only to men without families.
We noted facts that occurred in 2017, events that impacted women, youths, people belonging to a non-normative sexual expression or identity. All these violations, which can sometimes even take the form of homophobic murders. At least 3. 70 judgments against LGBTQI plus people in Tunisia.
6 mois de prison ferme. Nos recommandations, c'est d'appliquer la loi.
Our recommendations are to apply the law, to rethink the penal code, to immediately end the test of shame, the exam of shame, to ask for implementation of the Constitutional Court as soon as possible.
The
law on the fight against gender-based violence is a fundamental text in terms of individual liberties. The law on human trafficking is also a key law for us.
Now, more than 300 child soldiers have been released in South Sudan's war-torn region of Yambio under a program to help reintegrate them into society. Now, the UN said on Wednesday, of the 311 children freed by armed groups, 87 are girls, according to the United Nations mission in South Sudan. Now, South Sudan gained independence from Sudan in 2011, the result of a 2005 agreement that brought the curtain down on Africa's longest-running civil war. Now, the integration program in Yambio, which is located in the south of the country, aims at helping 700 child soldiers return to normal life. Of these, 563 are part of Kiir's force and 137 are with the rebels.
Resources are being utilized in South Sudan. Yeah, okay, the uniform.
A child below the age of 18 is not supposed to be in the army. He's supposed to be educated. So one of the opportunities that a child will get after this will be to go to school, to prepare his own future, to prepare the future of the family. Without that, then we are destroying the child and destroying the country as well.
This is the first step. It's the first step of getting children out of armed groups. It's the first steps of communities starting to heal. It's the first step of children going back to their homes and living a normal life. And I think it's as simple as that.
And I met a young woman who just wanted to be a tailor and to be able to sew clothes and sell clothes for a living. These are dreams of people that should have those dreams realised. So today we celebrate the first phase of what will become the largest release of children from armed groups that South Sudan has seen for many years.
Earlier, I had a discussion with a former Sudanese minister, a journalist who has widely covered South Sudan, as well as an international interrelation expert who, and of course our discussion revolved around the situation in the youngest nation in Africa, which is South Sudan. Be sure to have or to watch that interview shortly within the program. Now, let's now cross over to the Central African Republic, where the first group of former rebels was integrated into the Central African National Army on Monday after 4 months of training. Now, the country has been plagued by violence since 2013, when mostly Muslim Seleka rebels seized power, sparking reprisals from anti-Balaka Christian militia. Now, the program seeks to encourage armed groups to lay down their arms. The 101 new soldiers officially joined the army after 4 months of training during an official ceremony held in Bangui. Now, the young recruits who took part in the pilot disarmament project come from different armed groups. Another 139 ex-combatants have also been identified to begin military training in the coming days.
You no longer belong to armed groups. You no longer belong to socio-political military groups. You are no longer the auxiliaries of disorder, of illegitimate violence. Show the people of the Central African Republic that you are now the guarantors of their security and of the protection and defense of their territory. You have fulfilled all the objectives of the training and you can now be justifiably proud of what you have become. Tomorrow, alongside your brothers in arms, you will wear the colors of the Central African Republic. I am happy because before that I was part of an armed group. I laid down my arms and was trained to become a soldier. I am proud. It is time for me to serve the homeland so that our country becomes better. As we see it today, success is possible in Central Africa. This is an opportunity to renew this call by the head of state to all armed groups.
Now, Mozambican President Filipe Nyusi vowed Wednesday to introduce constitutional changes to decentralize power as part of peace efforts between his Frelimo party and the opposition, that is Renamo group. Renamo rebels fought a 16-year war against the ruling Frelimo party until 1992, and unrest again boiled over between 2013 and 2016. Nyusi said changes to how provincial governors are appointed and to provincial elections were a result of quote-unquote dialogue on peace that he maintained with Afonso Lakama, head of Renamo. Nyusi held a meeting with Lakama last year in the remote Gorongosa Mountains, where Lakama has been in hiding since the year 2015, surrounded by armed loyalists.
During the commemorations of Mozambique's Heroes Day, that is on February 3rd, 2017, after a consensus decision with Remamo's president, I announced the creation of 2 new commissions, namely of decentralization and of military affairs. In relation to the electoral system, found as a consensus, universal suffrage, direct, equal, secret and personal will become the general rule of the appointment of the President of the Republic, the members of the Assembly of the Republic, of the members of provincial assemblies, of the district assemblies and of the municipal assemblies. The matters of decentralization are not solely concerned with the responsibility of sovereignty, but also the organs and institutions of the state, for example, the definition and organization of the territory, national defense, security and public order, border inspection, the issue of currency, diplomatic relations, mineral resources and energy, as well as natural resources of the ground and subsoil.
Now, Zimbabwe's central bank has released its first monetary policy statement, and since veteran leader Robert Mugabe was ousted from power, while releasing the report, central bank governor John Manguye said Zimbabwe is negotiating a $1.5 billion guarantee from a bank that is Afreximbank to ensure foreign investors' funds are protected. Under new President Emmerson Mnangagwa, the government is really trying to assure foreign investors that their money is safe in Zimbabwe.
The export incentive has been enhanced, and to the extent that exports have grown by 36% in 2017, from 3.6 billion, sorry, for 2.8 billion to 3.8 billion in 2017. Mobile banking only in 2017 with transactions of more than 754 million transactions. Value, the worst could have happened, especially in September 2017. It had not been the positive impact of these nostro stabilization facilities on the country.
From Zimbabwe, let us now go to Kigali, Rwanda, where our correspondent Eugene Nangwe has the latest from there.
Right, back here in Rwanda, what's happening is that the Ministry of Education and other stakeholders in the education sector continue on with the campaign to actually create awareness on the enhancement of the quality of education right here in Rwanda. And of course, this campaign did kick off a few days ago and is expected to run over the next couple of days during this particular month, and is actually targeting over 600 schools right here in Rwanda. So what's happening in this campaign is that Ministry of Education officials and other stakeholders are actually visiting these schools one by one, taking there the message of ensuring or enhancing hygiene, and of course also looking at the quality of teaching in these particular schools. And of course this comes on the backdrop of the criticism that has been forwarded on the side of the education sector right here in Rwanda as far as the quality of education is concerned. There have been critics who have actually said that the quality of education, actually the graduates who graduate from higher learning institutions right here in Rwanda are not able to compete, in the job market, particularly now that Rwanda is in the East African community. And so the graduates do not have a sharp edge over their colleagues from the East African member states. And so this campaign actually targets to change that narrative or actually improve the state of the education sector right here in Rwanda. Whether that will actually work or not is actually something that definitely most opinion leaders and other experts are actually watching closely to actually ensure that they're able to see how it definitely delivers its results. Now, elsewhere, the Private Sector Federation is actually voting for its officials at the cell level. Now, just to bring it to speed on what the Private Sector Federation is right here in Rwanda, this is the umbrella body of private sector members. They come together under this umbrella body that actually aims at playing an advocacy role of its members, or actually for its members. And so these elections are aimed at picking new leaders who will be taking over from those who have been serving in this particular position over the last, year. And so what's going to happen is that when these leaders are elected, they are going to be representing their members or those who are in the private sector, and they are coming from these particular cells. And so the aim of this is actually to cast a wider, cast the net on a wider space to ensure maximum representation of the members of the private sector. And so this also comes with the backdrop of the challenge that President Paul Kagame did give to the private sector in Africa when he was giving his inaugural speech, or his acceptance speech for that matter, at the African Union Summit when he took over as the new chairperson of the African Union, where he challenged the private sector to actually play a key role or a major role or improve on its participation in African Union projects or projects within the African continent. And so whether these leaders being selected or elected will be able to play this role is also something that we'll also wait and see. And so these are just some of the major stories that are actually making headlines right here in Rwanda. From Kigali, I'm Eugene Adnangwe reporting.
Thank you, Eugene Anangwe, for that. Of course, those are basically all the top stories there from Rwanda. Now, let's now cross over to the west of the continent, and let's begin with the most populous country in Africa, that is Nigeria, and clashes between herdsmen and farmers in Nigeria's north has forced hundreds of people out of their homes and into camps, worsening an existing and already dire humanitarian crisis caused by years of Boko Haram insurgency. Now, this is the St. Teresa camp. We're going to see that shortly, for internally displaced people in Nigeria's northeast Adamawa state. Opened in 2014, St. Teresa is one of the 3 official camps in the state that gives shelter to victims of attacks by Islamist group Boko Haram. Now, the camp, which has the capacity to host 600 people, mainly those fleeing Boko Haram violence, is now filled beyond capacity by those fleeing communal clashes between farmers and herdsmen. Now, thousands of herdsmen, mainly from the Fulani ethnic group, have moved around in the last few years to flee spreading desertification in the north, putting pressure on dwindling fertile land amid rapid population growth. The spike in violence has become increasingly political ahead of an electioneering period in February 2019, with the critics of President Muhammadu Buhari, who is Fulani, accusing him of failing to get tough with the herdsmen.
On that day to cook for my children before church. Then I heard people shouting outside. I began to wonder what was happening because there was no sound of gunshots. I then asked my daughter to carry the younger kids and run to the river. I ran back inside and locked my doors. When I went into the village, it was deserted. Everyone had run away except me and my little baby. I ran into the river with the baby strapped to my back. Luckily, I was able to swim. I have not seen my husband since then.
Most of those that are here are really the poorest of the poor. They have no relations, they have no people working in government, and they have no second home apart from their homes in their villages. And these are the people, they are the most vulnerable people. And so we decided to offer them assistance so that they can live here, and with the hope that as soon as peace is restored in their various homes, then they can return back home.
Between farmers and herdsmen, we have been coordinating a lot of activities, from sensitization issues, creating awareness to people, to issues of when it happened, because the approach in disaster management now is trying to prevent it from happening. We are not waiting for disaster to happen for us to go and respond, but rather there's a new approach to disaster management, a kind of paradigm shift, whereby you take all measures that you're supposed to take to avoid the disaster.
Well, it is Thursday, and it's time we air our TBT soundbite tonight. And our throwback soundbite tonight is from the late Dr. John Garang, a revolutionary South Sudan leader, giving a speech in which he outlined his vision for the new Sudan. Let's take a look first.
This new Sudanese political dispensation cannot be forced on people. It must be voluntary. And therefore, in our literature, we have what we call voluntary unity of the country. That is where the issue of the right of self-determination comes in. And it is important that this be put in its proper context. The right of self-determination, and it has concerned many Northerners that this will bring this unity. that it will bring separation. And I say quite categorically, yes, it can bring separation if the new Sudan is not achieved. Mafizol Belbel, nobody would accept to be a second-class citizen in his or her own country. And so, unless we achieve a new Sudanese political dispensation, a new Sudan that belongs to all of us equally, in which we are equal stakeholders, then why should I remain in a country where I'm called Abid? No, I will not. But then, let us therefore take the bull by the horns and change the Sudan so that it belongs to all of us, so that it remains united. Otherwise,
The late Dr. Garang there speaking clearly. He had a vision for South Sudan, but things are not that good currently. It's exactly 29 minutes past the hour. We now take a short break, but when we return, we'll be airing a rerun of a conversation I had with the former South Sudan Minister Kosti Manibe, a regional affairs analyst John Gashie, and a South Sudan analyst Mohammed Jaffer on the situation currently in South Sudan.